Welcome to the show that puts you at the centre of the national conversation, talking about the issues that matter to you the most. Tonight, it's all kicking off at the most politically charged World Cup we've ever seen. FIFA claimed that the tournament in Qatar welcomes all. But that isn't how it seems to women who say their rights are curtailed, or to gay people whose very existence is illegal in that country. Most fans say that football can change the world. Look at the Kick It Out campaign. But if Harry Kane and Gareth Bale can't even choose what armbands to wear, just how seriously should we take that claim? I'm Trevor Phillips, and this is The Great Debate. Each week, we get to the heart of the issue dominating the headlines. Is it possible to separate football from politics? Qatar wants this World Cup to be a celebration of the most popular sport on earth. But there's more than a game at stake here. FIFA has refused to allow European captains to show their support for the LGBTQ+ community without being booked. The FA, whose slogan is "For All," seems powerless to act. And tonight, it looks as though the passion for the beautiful game won't be enough to make the finger-pointing fade away. And tonight, as ever, our viewers panel will have their say, share their stories. While joining us in the studio this week are the comedian Simon Brodkin, who some may know better as the character Lee Nelson, Professor of Media and Communications at Qatar University, Nuruddin Meladi, Senior Researcher of the Women's Rights Division of Human Rights Watch, Rohna Begum, and from Zurich, the former FIFA Director of Communications, Guido Tonioni. The big question tonight, is the Qatar World Cup an own goal for football?
We have our cultural norms. We are not going to change the society for 4 weeks event.
Will you and the players continue to speak out in Qatar?
I don't think we'll stop doing that. In fact, we won't stop doing that.
FIFA told World Cup teams to keep politics and lectures on morality out of the tournament.
These are the players. The tournament is in Qatar, and the players go there and play the game. The decision was made by other people, and if you want to criticize anybody, then criticize the people who made the decision.
Today I feel gay. Today I feel disabled. Today I feel a migrant worker.
Well, as always, we'll start with our viewers panel, and let's go first to Mohammed Ahmed in Moss Side, Manchester. Mohammed.
Hi. So I have an issue with the singling out of Qatar as if we didn't have, South Africa, Brazil, and Russia as the three other hosts. It seems bigotry and human rights are not always issues, but only when really attached to a Middle East country is there this increased need to show outrage.
So you don't contest that there's an issue here, but you think that Qatar's no worse than anywhere else?
Not necessarily, but that there are other countries that have also had issues where we haven't necessarily had the same level of outrage. Russia is, to me, the prime example of that.
OK. Let's talk to Shamina Akhtar. Shamina in East London, I think. Shamina, what's your view about this?
So, as a young woman who really enjoys playing the sport, I'm disappointed that FIFA has allowed cultural politics to get in the way of unifying audiences to enjoy a stream of competitive games that would have helped people come together. Football, to me, is a competitive sport, and it should not be involved in global politics in any way, shape, or form. It defeats the purpose of it being a sport. The fact that it's managed to spark this much controversy and debate shows that due diligence just wasn't showcased by FIFA executives in picking a host country that would not be subject to this much Western-faced criticism.
OK. All right, Shamina, you've got a question for our panel, but before you just answer, what position do you play when you play football?
So football's a game you can play in all positions. I usually play strike, but, you know, it's a team sport. I also play defence, goal and midfield.
OK, so what's your question?
So my question to the panel is, should FIFA be reformed?
OK, that is a pretty direct, on-the-nose question for today from Shamina. Does FIFA need to be reformed to change the rules? Guido Tonioni.
Good evening, everybody. I think FIFA needs to be reformed since quite a while, but not specifically because we have now some problems in Qatar. But FIFA had, since modern football took place, and modern football started with television and with the big money from the sponsors. Since then, we have some problems. We have the problem of corruption, and we have also the problem of political pressure being involved in football. What is very hard to stop, but FIFA is not enough aware of it. FIFA always tells football had nothing to do with sports. Politics have nothing to do with sports and with football, but that obviously is not true.
But do you think it is actually possible, Guido? I mean, the World Cup will make FIFA, what, $6 billion, I gather? And isn't the problem here the money?
Yes. The money is one problem, but let me say one thing. Why should also always a sport be the top of the protest in some countries? We know since 2010 that Qatar is the host of the FIFA World Cup. We know since then that there are some problems, which I do not want to quantify now. But since then, hundreds or even more international companies are making big business in Qatar, and nobody is caring about the labor laws. Nobody is caring about housing of the laborers. Nobody is caring about the wages of the wages of the workers. And now all of a sudden we have the culmination that everybody is hitting Qatar because they are not taking care of human rights and other things. Look at the neighboring states. Look, for example, at Iran. Iran today would need much more support for the women than Qatar. The life of women in Qatar is 100 times better than the life of women in Iran. And this is something I would like to bring into the discussion.
Thank you, Guido. Nuruddin, FIFA, reformable, needs to be reformed?
Well, thank you for the invite, and I'd like to express, first of all, the appreciation of the great job that FIFA has done during the last 12 years with regard to investigating lots of the concerns that were directed to Qatar since the winning the bid in 2012. I think following the course, in my opinion, there were lots of concerns raised with regard to women, with regard to workers' force in Qatar, with regard to lots of other issues. Now, I understand that all of these, in my opinion, were kind of thoroughly investigated by FIFA, let alone other international organizations like the International Labour Organization, for instance. Qatar government also have been appreciating all of these concerns, and they took them very, very seriously. And in my opinion, they managed to tick all the boxes which FIFA raised, which international organizations raised, which human rights organizations like, for instance, Amnesty and Human Rights Watch have also raised during the last 10 years. So in my opinion, both FIFA and the Qatar government should be applauded for reaching where we are now, and yesterday was a great opening for the World Cup events.
Simon Brodkin, you, I mean, I don't want to belittle your overall career, but you became very famous for, as it were, a stunt you pulled, showering Sepp Blatter, the FIFA president, with money. How do you respond to what Nuruddin's just said?
With shock. I think we do need to fix FIFA so FIFA can stop fixing football. And yes, I did prank Sepp. We both worked with Sepp, Guido. I'd like my notes back. I don't know if you know where they went. I showered him with banknotes. It was in character as my Premier League footballer, Jason Bent, and he was giving Sepp the money, the bribe for the World Cup that was going to be in North Korea in 2026, which, while laughable...
Sepp Blatter was not convicted of any offence. We just need to say that.
Yes, the irony was I got arrested and he didn't, which is amazing. But I think that FIFA are a laughingstock, not just because of the prank I pulled, but of course they allow themselves the atmosphere in which to be laughed at. Sepp Blatter himself recently said it was a mistake to give it to Qatar. They gave the bid to, I think it was in 2012, when they gave 2 World Cup bid results, and it was Russia and Qatar. And if that doesn't make them not fit for purpose, I don't know what does.
Yeah, that was 2010, but points made. Let's just go back to our viewers panel for a moment and talk to Jamie McGlennan, who's in Invergordon in Scotland. Jamie, what do you make of this?
Well, clearly FIFA doesn't give a hoot about any issues associated with Qatar, even though their laws and way of life have long been known and documented before being awarded this role. And since it's being awarded, then even if a small percentage of the media reports are accurate, then countries should boycott all FIFA events with until this issue can be addressed.
OK, thank you very much, Jamie. Stay there. Rotner, you must be pleased about all of the conversation going on across the globe about human rights. What do you think about this issue of the boycott?
Well, we don't take a position on boycotts. That's a very personal and political decision for people to take. But what we are calling on people to do is to support a fund for remedy. What we've had is since 2010, when FIFA awarded the World Cup to Qatar, they did it without any due diligence on human rights, without any conditions on human rights either, which meant that even though they knew that it was going to take millions of migrant workers to build the necessary infrastructure to deliver that World Cup, they didn't do anything about ensuring the worker protections for them. And as we suspected, huge amounts of abuses took place, including widespread charging of workers illegal recruitment fees, then forcing them to live in terrible forms of accommodation, working in extreme heat and humidity, and then stealing their wages. A lot of workers had their wages stolen over the last 12 years, and many of these workers also died. Thousands of them died in uninvestigated circumstances. And now...
Nuruddin, this is a very different picture from the rather glowing one you painted.
Well, Rotna, I think this is an exaggeration. I don't think the Qatari government, from the beginning, they said we are infallible or we don't have issues of concern to address. I think they've raised them with the FIFA, with other international organizations, as I mentioned, I mean, very clearly with the International Labour Organization. And the statistics are available on their website, and there is lots of stuff, by the way. I would like to point you to that. The Qatari government during the last 10 years, I think they did do excellent job with regard to addressing these issues. I mean, one of them, for example, is raising the wages. Sorting out everything related to the rights of the workers.
I mean, I can tell you that I worked on Qatar long before they got the World Cup, right? So before 2010, I was documenting migrant worker abuses. I knew what the situation was. FIFA would have known what the situation was, but they gave them the World Cup anyway. And
but all of those concerns, they were addressed and they were raised.
No.
They were raised and they were addressed. As of Saturday,
since in the eve of the World Cup, workers are still facing abuse.
I think all of them agree. Guido, where do you stand on this? Do you think the Qataris actually did respond to the complaints that were made or not?
I think they did. I think they did. I spoke recently with a tough trade unionist in Switzerland. She was there several times, and she denied that she was against all these allegations. She was there on the working places, and she was there in the housing place and so on. And she said there is a significant progress. There is not yet. We have not an ideal world yet in Qatar with the workers. But she says that in the last years, since she was visiting year by year the place, that Qatar made significant progress regarding the labor right and payment and taking care of the workers and the housing too.
All right, thank you, Guido. Look, let's go back to our viewers panel. You have heard some of the points that have been made. I'm sure you have all watched the news and you've been reading the newspapers. The big test today, actually, was whether the European captains would wear the armband, particularly on the issue of LGBTQ plus rights. I'm going to put this to you. It was decided by the Football Association that Harry Kane would not wear the armband that he wanted to because it might attract a yellow card and risk his participation further. I want to ask you, do you think that, irrespective of that, Harry Kane and, of course, Gareth Bale should have worn the rainbow armband? Those who think they should have just gone ahead and worn the armband anyway, please put your hands up. A significant majority of you would say that he should have worn the armband. Well, I think we will pass that on to our colleagues over in sport. We're going to go to the break. You're watching The Great Debate. Up next, is the criticism of Qatar nothing more than Western hypocrisy?
England and Wales captains will not wear One Love armbands at their World Cup matches in Qatar.
Harry Kane and Gareth Bale could have been booked for breaching the equipment rules by wearing these unsanctioned armbands. Some of the Iranian players didn't sing their national anthem, and there's also some jeering of the anthem.
The contacts, for example, for advertisers have now left the company. So you have several large brands that are wondering what to do, who to contact. You now have copyright infringements where, because Twitter has violated a US law that restricts how much of content you're allowed to upload, they're not policing that, and you're having people upload full movies in 2-minute increments via their Twitter accounts. You have people continuing to abuse footballers, and those tweets are not being policed and taken down at all in a timely manner. You have, on top of that, the blue tick fiasco, where Musk launched this commercial idea that you would charge people $8 per month to keep a blue tick, which is basically a verification tool or an attempt to do that. And you had companies that have, or people who have impersonated companies, also buying a blue tick. So, for example, Eli Lilly, the pharmaceutical company that makes insulin, is one of the market leaders, with a bogus tweet from a bogus account saying, we're now giving insulin away for free. So it's an absolute disaster in terms of what's going on inside this business. And also users are leaving. You know, that's the most important thing. TikTok is picking up the slack. Mastodon, an alternative sort of platform for chat, and is also learning that they're gaining huge numbers. So the defections, the staff layoffs, the impersonations, the online abuse, I mean, frankly, this really is a brand in a lot of trouble.
Welcome back to The Great Debate, where we're asking, is the Qatar World Cup an own goal for football? Now, there's been a debate raging ever since Qatar was awarded the World Cup in 2010. With a population of under 3 million, no serious football history, no infrastructure and soaring temperatures, many believed it should never have been considered. Yet there are plenty of other places in the world that outlaw homosexuality and repress women in the eyes of the West. So is it fair to single out Qatar when many of the countries competing in the World Cup could also justly be criticised for laws we may dislike? Let's talk to Iqra Nawab, who is herself a football fan. Iqra, what do you think about this point?
Being an avid football fan, time of the World Cup and the Euros is always an exciting one. But how I see it is that the World Cup is being overly politicised, and it's turning into a way to nitpick at Qatari culture and the country's religious practices. It would be a different story if they were disrespectful or slandered the LGBTQ+ community, but this hasn't explicitly happened. So my question to the panel is, isn't it hypocrisy to claim the moral high ground?
Thank you, Iqra. You stay there. Iqra's question for the panel is it hypocrisy to claim the moral high ground? Nuruddin.
Yes, it is. I mean, certainly it's very hypocritical what has been going on for the last few years with regard to sending signs of lessons from above to the Qataris. As I mentioned before, and I'd like to direct my speech to my colleagues Rotna and also Simon, to come and visit Qatar. Come and see Qatar for yourself, and you can see what I'm talking about, and also what other people who are trying to paint a different picture from what we see in some of the media reports. Qatar has made huge strides with regard to improving human rights, the workers' rights, addressing all the issues that were raised in the beginning since it won the bid. Qatar never mentioned that it is an angels country, a country full of angels. Every country is not infallible. So therefore, I mean, what I'm to...
Okay. We've got the point. Simon,
yeah.
You've just been offered a first-class ticket and hotel to
second class for me
in Doha. Are you going to take up that invitation?
Let's talk travel arrangements after the show. I mean, am I living on a different planet here to what's going on? Using the term nitpicking about what's going on in Qatar, I think you said all the allegations have been looked at and dealt with, and you're talking about, Guido, these huge strides. It is illegal to be gay, right? And FIFA, your former organisation, awarded the most prestigious prize in the whole world of football to a country that is clearly woefully short of the standards that we now hold. I don't represent anyone. I'm not here for Britain, and I'm not here. And this throwing stuff going, you guys did this then, and that's why should we allow you to speak? I'm not trying to lecture anyone. I'm not trying to say anyone's better than anyone. And of course, European history is blood-soaked and completely, in many aspects, wrong. But that doesn't avoid the fact that right now, going on in Qatar today, and they've just been awarded the World Cup, you are imprisoned or sometimes, I believe, killed for being gay. And women's rights are unquestionably woefully short of the, and the final thing, which is clearly, again, the workers. If Qatar's got billions and billions to spend on the World Cup,
Guido,
why could it only give the workers pennies an hour?
Guido, you've been there. Do you recognise the picture Simon's painting?
No, I basically agree with Simon. I agree with Simon that this is the wrong place. I don't agree with Simon that Qatar is the only place where the gay people and others have problems to live. Speak about Russia, speak about other countries, but Qatar is too small to host a World Cup. I told this to the Qatari already in the year 2004 when they asked me, can we, I was working there, they asked me, can we host a World Cup? I said, no, you can host Olympic Games in October. By the way, today the temperature is not a problem for the athletes, but you can host the Olympic Games in October. They were twice bidding for Olympic Games. They didn't get it. The bid were bidding once. with
okay.
with the FIFA executive committee. Nobody read the technical report, and they got it. You know.
So your point, Guido, is it's not so much that Qatar's behaviour and its performance on human rights; it's just not big enough to hold the football. Do you think that's right, Rothney? Is that the reason that it shouldn't have been in Qatar, from your point of view?
They should have done due diligence on human rights, and they should have set labour rights conditions. It's one thing to give it to them, but then to set no conditions whatsoever when they knew millions of migrant workers were going to be needed for that infrastructure. I mean, this is a country that didn't have a big enough airport. They didn't have public transport. Miles of roads, all of that has been built. 8 new stadiums we have now. All of that, everything in sight that you see in Qatar, that fans will see, from their drivers to everything you see, has been built and serviced and delivered by migrant workers on low wages. Many of them didn't get their wages. And even with reforms, and I do want to take this point, reforms were important, but it took so long. We fought so hard for that. In 2020, some of the most major reforms came. 2 years ago. That means the vast majority did not get to benefit. We have workers who were sent home humiliated without their wages, and this is petty wages. I mean, you get $200 a month. How much are other people earning, right? And now, you know, we've got people who died, families who are suffering right now because their loved ones died and they got no compensation.
Noureddin, very briefly, because I want to talk to a couple of audience members who've actually lived in Qatar. How do you respond to this?
Thousands or probably tens of thousands of homosexuals and people of different cultural background, different kind of tastes and whatever are now in Qatar. The Qatari government has expressed this many, many times. Everyone is welcome, but we need respect of the local culture. If you are in Rome, behave as the Romans do. If you are in Rome, Simon, behave as the Romans do. What they are asking is simple respect of the local culture, and everybody in the world, when you enter their homes, you are asked to show some
very
kind
briefly,
of respect.
Simon.
You don't get killed or you don't get imprisoned.
Noureddin, let Simon just very briefly respond.
You do not.
This isn't about...
Certainly you do not. No, you do not. This is exaggerated, Simon, what you are, and it's untrue.
All right, Noureddin, let Simon respond very briefly.
This debate is about whether Qatar should have got the World Cup. I'm not interested right now in looking at the Qatar and how nice your life is out there. Of course, you're not a worker building the stadium. You are not a gay man yourself. You are not a woman. And these are the people we're talking about who are so...
All right, sorry, I want to go back to our audience and talk to our viewers panel. And, in fact, there are 2 people who, in fact, grew up in Qatar. Let's talk first to Sarah Little. What do you make of this debate about Qatar and what it's like, really?
Yeah, well, I spent my early adolescence in Qatar, and while there have been strides towards gender equality over the past decade, there is certainly a very long way to go. Qatar is the only country in the GCC today that continues to enforce male guardianship laws for female travelers under 25 after Saudi Arabia lifted those in 2019. Wives are required by law to obey their husbands and can face legal consequences if they don't. Qatari women don't have authority over their children's finances, their travel documents, their official documents, and sometimes their schooling and medical treatments. Not to mention there's little opportunity for women or girls to actually play football in Qatar. So I think that while it's great Qatar is the first Arab and Muslim nation to host the World Cup, it's unfortunate that it comes at the cost of accountability for upholding women's rights.
All right, let's stay with us. Let's talk to Lauren. Lauren Armstrong. I think, Lauren, you're in Bristol. And you, if I understand it rightly, grew up in Qatar.
I lived there for a little while. Yeah.
Do you recognise the picture that's being painted here?
Well, I'd love to understand why Qatar and this event in particular have attracted such negativity. GCC countries and with similar laws have been holding international events like Formula One, boxing, golf, tennis and MotoGP for many years and have not experienced so much criticism. Celebrities are often seen holidaying in the Gulf and many global pop stars have performed there. So why Qatar? Why Qatar is receiving this and why this event in particular?
OK, let's go back to our panel and Rothney, why Qatar of all? I mean, you could have picked all sorts of other places to complain about human rights.
We do. We pick every country and we complain about human rights. In fact, we're complaining about the UK, we complain about Bahrain and the F1 that's being played there. We complain about golf being played in Saudi Arabia. We talk about all of these countries and their human rights
records. But we could end up with a situation where you can't have sport anywhere because everybody's got a problem.
It's not talking about... We don't talk about boycotts. We're not saying boycott these places, but we are talking about sometimes, does it make sense to have it there? And if you're going to have it there, what does it mean? So in a country like Qatar, they knew it was going to take millions of migrant workers to build the infrastructure, and they didn't do anything. When we talk about women's rights, what did they do in the last 12 years? Honestly, if you look at the reforms, the biggest reforms came 20 years ago. They've in fact fell behind. They are an outlier when it comes to women's rights in the region. They are far more repressive on women than many countries in their neighbouring states.
All right, we are going to come back and talk more about that in a moment. You're watching The Great Debate. Up next, it's begun. So is it now time just to kick back and enjoy the World Cup? Just focus on what's happening on the field and not off it. We'll hear from the former England manager, Big Sam Allardyce. Welcome back to The Great Debate, where we're asking, is the Qatar World Cup an own goal for football? Well, what do those inside the game think about the World Cup taking place in Qatar? Sam Allardyce has managed England and several other top-flight teams. He's been giving me his views about the criticism of the tournament. Sam, thanks for joining us. What did you make of the whole issue with the armbands and all of that?
Well, they feel it necessary. I think that whatever we feel or what we discuss, or England discuss in terms of whether they wear the armbands or not, once that decision's made, then that's a very positive thing, you know. We all know that people are talking about human rights still, and we have to hopefully not let that take over the football in the end.
What role do you think footballers should be playing in that whole issue? Of course, there was a question of whether Harry Kane should wear this armband and so on. Do you think that it's right for footballers to get involved at that level?
Personally, politically, no. I think that politically, football should stay separate from politics. Bringing politics into football is considered to be extremely dangerous, you know. So that, for me, it's not quite the done thing. But of course, if there's a collective view in terms of the FA going forward and the players agree to it, I hope that none of the players have flagged up any differences that they may have had. I don't think they have, and they go along with it, you know. And they've taken the knee. I don't think anybody else is, are they?
Not as far as we know at this moment. But when you say it's extremely dangerous, what did you mean?
Well, politics in football is very dangerous in terms of what you involve it in, and what it can disrupt what is our game, our national game, and shouldn't really be a part of it for me. It should be purely about the football. I think we talked about the human rights side so long before it. I don't think we should talk about it when the tournament is going on.
Let me put the argument that's made against what you've just said, which is that actually some gesture from the England football team, even though we gave them a tonking, might well have lifted the Iranian women who are protesting against what's happening in their country.
Well, yes, I mean, it can be a platform for everybody to voice their opinion. I get that. But as in terms of what's happening in Iran with the women, I'm a football manager, not a qualified or a deep person in terms of look at it to actually comment one way or the other.
Players have been taking a knee for 2 years. Today, Harry Kane has, I guess, been instructed by the FA not to wear a particular armband because, of course, he might have got himself a yellow card. Next thing we know, he's out of the game. I suppose one criticism that might be made here is that the players were prepared to protest when there was no cost to them, but where it might have risked the game, they actually decided not to follow principle. What do you make of that?
No, that's the players, that's the FA, not the players. I mean, the players may look at that situation, but the FA would not jeopardise their participation in the World Cup, I would think, if they're that strongly or feel that strongly about it, you know, that they should remonstrate or make their points clear before the players get involved, for me. So, obviously, I don't know the ins and outs of it, but obviously it seems that FIFA have said they can't wear those armbands, and that has obviously got them to choose not to do that.
Lastly, Sam, what do you make of FIFA's behaviour through this whole saga?
Well, I am at the moment watching the documentary on FIFA, of course, and of course, one would hope they've cleaned their act up enormously compared to the documentary that I watched. The sad thing is, after all that investigation and after all that interrogation, if you like, and all that wait, it doesn't appear that anybody's really been punished enough, and that's a great sadness. But let's hope it's triggered the FA into running their company, their world of football governing body in the correct and obvious manner, and not let it get interrupted or corrupted by money.
Sam, thank you very much indeed.
A pleasure.
Perhaps now that the football itself has started, Qatar will become a World Cup on the TV just like any other. These big events are when a nation tends to show its best face to the rest of the world, and the rest of the world conveniently forgets its shortcomings. So now the games have begun, will the noise outside the stadium just fade into a distant chant? Let's talk to Amy Ludor in Witham. Witham, I beg your pardon. What's your view about where we are?
I think we shouldn't be discussing all these controversies, but I think rather focus on the game itself. People should be feeling excited to be able to watch the World Cup in wintertime, especially with all the economic issues that we're having to deal with. I don't think that discussing these issues will make a big difference. It will just be casting a shadow over people enjoying a game of football. So my question is, why don't we focus on the football?
OK, thank you very much, Amy. There's quite a lot of... there's some thumbs down, I think. There's a lot of reaction anyway. Amy's question for the panel, can we just focus on the football? Guido, can't you separate sport and politics?
I don't think so. I don't think so that we can focus only on football. Would be nice, but it's not the reality. You asked before if this is an own goal of Qatar and FIFA. It could be an own goal, but it's premature to already make a decision. You have to see what happens in the next 55 matches or 60 matches, and then you can make a final decision. But what I would like to say is that Qatar probably today, as it is today, they would not again bid for a World Cup in their country.
But Guido, are you saying that if the football's great fun and there's drama and there's really great football, we'll forget all the stuff that, for example, Rothnar's been talking about?
The drama will come. We will have enough drama in the next few weeks, you know. But I think that especially the media, they will still put the finger on the problems. Good news is no news in the media world, you know, and they cannot stop from one day to the other what they have built up in the recent weeks. They missed a lot of opportunities in the last 12 years, but now they go to a climax. I think this will be a spoiled World Cup. Whatever happens on the field, it will be spoiled by the side noise, which will appear day by day and will punish the organizers and FIFA.
Rothnar, this is an interesting point that actually the world will be very excited about some of the issues you've raised today, but by next week, when all the drama's on the field and who's going to reach the knockout stages and so on, it'll all be old news.
Well, I want people to think about other fans around this world. You may be sitting at home wanting to join football, right? Well, so are the kids in Nepal and Bangladesh and India. All of these kids are massive football fans. They play football on the pitches. Their parents love football. Their parents were involved in building the stadiums and the roads that allowed these fans to go and enjoy these games. But some of their parents never got their wages. They died. And football for them is bringing up mixed emotions. They're really happy. They want to celebrate these games, but it's so torn up by what's going on. And FIFA made a crucial mistake. On the eve of the World Cup, all they needed to do was to say that they would remedy the abuses of the last 12 years. They have $7 billion they're going to make in revenue. They have the money. Why are they not coming in with remedy?
All right, look, let's just pursue this issue of, you like, the emotional pull of football and whether it can overcome some of the arguments we've been talking about. And I want to talk to Julie Fay, because I know, Julie, you are a big supporter of the Wales team.
Yes, I am.
Is there anything that could persuade you not to watch Gareth Bale if they get through the group stage and into knockout?
I should be watching the Welsh team, of course I will. But I will not be watching the World Cup as a whole like I would normally. When the World Cup comes on, I watch pretty much every single match, and I love it. But this time round, it's different. I've watched football all my life. My father, Trevor, was a captain of the local football team. My nephew is a professional coach, and my daughter plays for her university team. And as you say, I'm also Welsh, and I promised myself that if ever Wales got to the finals, I'd be there. However, my daughter is gay, and I love her more than I love football. So I won't be going, given the human rights record of the host country's regime. FIFA is an organisation where corruption hides in plain sight, and yet the game brings joy and inspiration to millions. How long are we going to put up with this? How long is this going to go on? Is the Qatar World Cup going to be one step too far?
There's a lot of support for that point of view on our panel there, Julie. Thank you. Nuruddin, do you get the point here that actually this has spoiled the game for some people who love the game?
Let me talk about the in response to that. I mean, the Qatar government for the last 12 years has been employing hundreds of thousands of unskilled workers from around the world, from the poorer countries, who were stopped from having any opportunity in the Western countries. Qatar has been employed people from Bangladesh, from India, from Nepal, and so forth. And all of those people, as I mentioned, during the last 10 years, all of the issues raised by human rights organizations, and including FIFA, they were sorted out.
You've made this point in several ways. I want you just to deal with Julie's point that she adores football, she loves her team.
Yes.
But what she understands about Qatar, even having heard what you said 3 or 4 times already, so you don't need to repeat it, it still makes it impossible for her to want to watch the World Cup. Do you understand that?
I think the world today and yesterday has been seen a world-class event being organized by Qatar with the FIFA, right? What has been achieved should be uploaded, in my opinion, as a world-class cultural festival, world-class football festival, and it should be looked at this way. Now, this is one. Okay. Secondly, I hope people around the world appreciate that this small country, Qatar, dared to put a bid in 2012 and win it against the US, against Britain, against other European countries.
Okay, you've taken us to an important point. You have taken us to an important point, Nuruddin, which is about the money. And we're going to talk about that in a moment. You're watching the great debate. Coming up, what will Qatar's World Cup legacy be? Shouldn't human rights be in the starting lineup for any future bids?
Breached the road. There is a lot of gas being fired all around us. It is an absolute carnival kind of atmosphere out here for Prime Minister Modi's decisive victory. These students are defying the prohibitory orders, and now they're going to be arrested.
We aim to be the best and most trusted place for news. The roads have been inundated The only way out is to get people by boat. This on any given day would have been bustling with people, but today it's absolutely deserted. I'm Neville Lazarus, and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi.
Welcome back to the great debate where we're asking, is the Qatar World Cup an own goal for football? Well, what legacy will Qatar 2022 leave? Gianni Infantino, president of FIFA, talked rather vividly of unity, peace and global togetherness the other day. Perhaps he hopes that the issues discussed will shine a light into some dark places that wouldn't otherwise have been mentioned. And should we expect those behind these global events to be more honest about the power sport holds in the world? I want to talk to Maria Cash about this, who's in our viewers' panel. Maria, what do you make of it?
So when it comes to the advertising companies, it's business, yes, but I think they have got the opportunity to raise awareness and shine the light on issues. Like players speak up and become advocates for charities and raising awareness. I think the advertisers have the opportunity now to a worldwide stage to do the same. So my question to the panel is, what can future World Cups take from this one?
OK, thank you so much, Maria. That's a positive look there. Maria's question for the panel is, what can future World Cups learn from this one? Simon, there's some upsides here, aren't there?
Well, the world now knows more about the abuses of human rights and about various people's rights in Qatar. I don't think that's a good enough reason to give it to Qatar. Look, FIFA aren't going to change. They're happy. They're driving around with chauffeur-driven cars, going to their big hotels. They're happy. Qatar's got what they wanted. They're happy. Money wins. And it is a disgrace it's gone to Qatar, but it was also a disgrace it went to Russia and that the Olympics, the Winter Olympics, went to China. Yes, but just because we're making a noise about this and not enough about other things, it doesn't mean we should be quiet about this. And there's a lot of whataboutery going on. What about there? What about there? Yes, let's make more noise about everything. You know, what can we learn? We can learn, hopefully, that FIFA isn't fit to be awarding these things.
Nuruddin, just very briefly, do you not feel that there is some sense here that money has really swept all before it? We don't have to defend Qatar, but just generally as a matter of principle.
I mean, money is a very important tool and provision to make international global events like this successful. And without having enough funding for these events, Qatar wouldn't have been. Qatar have so far, as officially announced, has spent about $200 billion in infrastructure to renew its infrastructure as a country, but also to build this. They have been paying a lot, and they've been employing hundreds of thousands.
So much money,
they've been employing
pay them more.
You let me finish the point.
Five seconds.
As of yesterday, FIFA very, very clearly in the opening ceremony announced that there is no disgrace, as mentioned by my friend, about Qatar. On the contrary, they've been talking about strides, big strides of success, and an event of world-class standard.
I've got to stop you. I've got to stop you, Nuruddin.
Breaking the monopoly.
Nuruddin, I have to stop you. Guido, very briefly, people who say money's won here, what do you think?
is the key issue. But you asked before, is FIFA learning the lesson? I think they learned the lesson, and if they do not learn the lesson, then FIFA is a hopeless case. And keep in mind that this time in Qatar, the national associations start to raise their voices, what they never did before.
Okay.
Before FIFA was much more a dictatorship. Now the awareness of the power of single national associations has grown, and I think that it cannot be repeated what happened in Qatar.
Okay, Rotna, very briefly.
This is a World Cup of money and privilege. A ton of people made money out of it, but not everyone. The low-paid migrant workers have missed out. And we were talking about a legacy, because every World Cup has to have a legacy. That legacy should mean that workers who face wage theft get remedied. It's old wages. People who died should be compensated. And when we talk about LGBT and women, they do need to ensure that they're improving on these situations, which they're not right now.
OK, thank you very much, all, because that's all we have time for this evening. It just remains for me to say thank you to our panellists here in the studio, Simon Brodkin, Nuruddin Maladi, Rothnam Begum and Guido Tonioni. Of course, it's you at home who are always at the centre of our conversation. If you'd like to be part of the programme next time, get in touch by emailing thegreatdebate@sky.uk. And for now, I want to thank our viewers panel, who, as always, have contributed and really set us alight tonight, actually. I really appreciate it. We'll see you soon. And, of course, to you at home, thank you for joining us this evening. Keep talking, and we'll see you again with another big topic at the same time next week for The Great Debate.